The backcountry of Maine is rough, unforgiving, and absolutely gorgeous. The trails will challenge you and take you to your limits, be it at water crossings, sheer rock scrambles, and more blowdowns than you can count. But at the end of the day, it's all worth it for the magnificent views at the top of Maine's greatest peaks. Join us as we backpack two of Maine's 4,000 footers, Mount Sugarloaf and Mount Spaulding, a grueling hike up an epic trail with epic views. This is Brew England, a channel dedicated to all things New England culture, adventures, and beer. Before we begin, please take the time to like and subscribe. This helps small-time YouTubers like myself out considerably. Thank you. Mount Sugarloaf and Mount Spaulding are in the Maine Carrabassett Valley. From the Caribou Valley trailhead at the Appalachian Trail, the hike was 11 miles round trip, which we broke up into 2 days. Day 1 was 6.4 miles up to Mount Sugarloaf and over to the Spaulding Mountain lean-to campsite. Day 2 was 5.4 miles, including a short 0.2 mile trail up to Mount Spaulding and back to the trailhead. Originally, we were going to add the 5.6 mile in and back from the Spaulding tent site to Mount Abraham, but ultimately we decided against this. We were exhausted after our first day and wanted to get off the mountain before a heavy rain hit in the afternoon, which we failed at anyways. The total elevation gain was 4,366 feet, and the terrain was difficult, especially the initial climb up Sugarloaf, which included several rock scrambles, including an extremely tricky section. To add to this, there were countless blowdowns between Sugarloaf and Spaulding, greatly slowing us down. Overall, I would rate this as difficult. Probably not the best hike for beginner hikers or backpackers. If you do hike this mountain, make sure you have proper footwear, clothing, shelter, and sufficient food and water. We brought a Sawyer Squeeze water filtration device, which allowed us to refill our water at numerous water sources throughout the hike. But good to note that between Sugarloaf and Spaulding campsite, there was no reliable sources. Plan accordingly. Just getting to the trailhead is an adventure in itself. The trip up Route 27 up to the Carrabassett Valley is scenic in its own right. It's a 3-hour drive from Portland and 5 hours from Boston. The 4 miles down the rugged Caribou Valley Road was pretty rough. It's a poorly maintained dirt road with plenty of divots to avoid and several sections on the verge of being unpassable for all but the highest clearance vehicles. While we survived with a small SUV, driving sedan is riskier. Even still, we managed to crack our windshield with all the divots, which thankfully was covered by insurance. Eventually, the road is blocked off right before a metal bridge, which is where there is ample parking. From there, it's about a mile hike to the actual Appalachian Trail trailhead along a very flat and wide road. At the trailhead, you can take a right and head up to the Crockers, which is also Maine 4,000 footers. However, we took the left to cross the Carrabassett River and head up Sugarloaf. It's a quick walk until you reach the first obstacle, the south branch of the Carrabassett River. In the spring or periods of heavier rain, this can be a challenge to cross. However, the water levels were at manageable levels where we were able to rock hop until we got to a plank bridge someone generously erected. We met an Appalachian Trail thru hiker on her way to Georgia who led the way. Maybe the coolest thing about this hike was how many badass thru hikers we met going both north and southbound. Once we were safely across, the trail gradually ascended Sugarloaf with plenty of routes and stone staircases. But overall easy. After around a mile, the trail got much more vertical with steeper stone steps and rock scrambles. This was a pretty typical New England trail we were already used to. However, we encountered a steep rock ledge we had to get up. Ultimately, we had to take our packs off and throw them up onto the shelf and then do some bouldering with all of our limbs to climb up. On our way down, a clearly experienced thru hiker would easily pass by us during this section without even blinking, descending as if the obstacle wasn't even there. Superhuman. Once we got past that section, there were some more minor rock scrambles and steep ascents, but nothing too crazy. The best part was that we already gained considerable altitude, so we were starting to get spectacular views. With a mile left to go to the junction, the trail started to even out a bit as we climbed the ridgeline. This was also where the trail got very wet, meandering between ponds, and there were parts where the creeks and streams were the trail. This is a great time to filter some water if you brought a water filter. It was smooth sailing until we reached the junction with the side trail going up Sugarloaf. The side trail is just 0.6 miles but includes nearly 900 feet of elevation gain. The trail was pretty straightforward without any challenging terrain. At the bald summit, we were met with the expansive views of the Carrabassett Valley and nearby peaks, including the Bigelows, the Crockers, Spaulding, and Abraham. There also was a lot of infrastructure from cell phone towers to maintenance sheds and even a helicopter landing pad. This is atop a ski resort after all. Just above the ski trails descending the mountain. We break for a quick snack and a can of Baxter's Summer Crush Ale. This was a juicy pale ale and a nice reward for hiking to the summit. We didn't stay long, however. The black flies were extremely bad, swarming our faces, so we made our way back down to the junction. The next 2 miles to Spaulding should have been easy. It was relatively flat with the occasional incline heading up the mountain. However, we were met with blowdown after blowdown after blowdown. Insane. We've never seen anything like this. These just weren't small trees that you had to step over, but rather massive trees completely blocking the trail. We had to scramble up and over, down and below, and around them, squeezing through branches and getting more scrapes and cuts we could count. There had to be at least 50 major blowdowns and countless smaller ones. By the time we climbed the 2 miles with 700 feet of elevation gain to the side trail up Spaulding, we were cut up, bruised, and exhausted. Navigating the blowdowns took considerably more time than expected, and the sun was starting to set. After we got to the junction for the side trail up to the summit of Spaulding, things got a lot easier. No more blowdowns, and it was just a 0.8 mile gradual downhill hike to the campsite. However, we were so exhausted that even this relatively short distance felt like it took forever. There were moments where we thought we hiked too far, but just as we were starting to panic, we reached the Spaulding lean-to campsite. We were exhausted and there were a few other hikers at the campsite, so we didn't do much filming. The Spaulding lean-to campsite is a rugged backcountry campsite with limited amenities. Camping there is free and first come, first serve. Near the trail was the main water source, a stream with plenty of flowing water. Good to note that despite how pristine the water may seem, it's not potable. It has to be filtered or treated for bacteria and parasites. A short walk up an incline, you made it to camp, which consists of a large lean-to which can probably sleep 8 to 12 people and lots of room to set up tents. There's probably enough room for at least 30 tents to fit comfortably, maybe more. There's also a backcountry privy, so you're not completely roughing it. We set up our tent behind the lean-to and went to filter water for dinner. Our dinner consisted of Mountain House and good-to-go freeze-dried meals and some of our favorite brews. We brought a Jetboil mini camp stove to boil water for the meals, and after 15 minutes, they were ready to eat. The good-to-go pad thai wouldn't win any awards in a restaurant, but it was really good considering we were miles into the wilderness up a mountain. Highly recommend it. We had the Sacred Profane Lemonade Shandy, which was a refreshing treat after such a long day. I had the Mountain House Chicken Fajita Bowl, which actually packed more flavor than I expected. Even without the hot sauce I brought, for good measure, it would have been more than sufficiently spiced. I paired the meal with Bandit Brewing's Milltown Lager, the perfectly light, crisp beverage to go with the fajita bowl, brewed right in Biddeford, Maine. After cleaning up dinner and finishing our beverages, there was nothing left to do but wipe some of the dirt up and head to bed. By this point, it was already dark out and we were dead exhausted. We got up early the next day and made a quick breakfast of instant coffee, using the stove to boil the water, and a freeze-dried breakfast skillet, which was surprisingly very flavorful and cheesy. We kept hearing how mediocre these freeze-dried meals are, but we were impressed by all of our choices. We packed up camp and headed down to filter water for our hike down the mountain. Originally, we were planning on leaving our packs hike the 3 miles over to Mount Abraham, another Maine 4,000 footer, but with an impending rainstorm forecasted for the afternoon, we wanted to get down the mountain before it hit, and spoiler, we were not successful. However, we were feeling good, really good. We flew back up Mount Spaulding without missing a beat. I took the short 0.2 mile side trail up to the summit, which was beautiful, completely wooded with no views. While there is a side trail to a view, it was starting to drip by this point, so we decided not to linger at the peak. As it turns out, going past all the blowdowns was much easier than trying to tackle them hiking up the mountain. While it definitely slowed us down, by the time we made it to the juncture with Mount Sugarloaf, we were still feeling very good. Soon after we left the junction, coming down Sugarloaf, it started to really rain and then downpour. We picked up the pace as much as we could safely muster, but inevitably, we were soaked. Soon we got to the steep part of the descent, which slowed us down as we carefully descended the mountain, trying to avoid slipping in these slick conditions. Once we got to the ledges, the wind really picked up. We were hiking down in a veritable storm. We also discovered maybe the most uncomfortable feeling in the world. The rain had completely saturated all the shrubs. Hiking in areas where the shrubs overgrew onto the trail was like walking through an icy cold car wash, completely soaking anything that was still dry. At this point, I couldn't film anymore, as I had to put my phone in my backpack to avoid it becoming waterlogged. We got back to the cliff ledge where we took off our packs and carefully lowered ourselves down. While we were doing this, a Sobo AT hiker nonchalantly slid down a 70-degree slope like it was a normal trail, not even slowing down as he bounded past us. Crazy. With the tough part behind us, the rain let up a little as we continued our descent. It wasn't too long before we reached more gradual ground, and after a mile, we were back at the river crossing. We were worried that the downpour would cause the river to swell, one of the reasons why we wanted to get off the mountain before the storm hit, but this was unfounded. In fact, it was slightly easier crossing back since we needed to just slide down the rocks instead of climb up them. Past the river crossing, we encountered multiple groups of both thru hikers and day hikers, some on bikes coming from the nearby ski resort. By this time, the sun was out and shining as we made it back to the trailhead and the short walk back to the car. We were soaked, tattered, and bruised, but felt extremely accomplished for our short trip into the backcountry. However, we had one more obstacle, navigating the 4-mile-long dirt road back to the main road. At some point, the windshield for my car developed a small crack, which was fixed after a short trip to Safelight a few weeks later. Thankfully, covered by insurance. But that's the type of ruggedness we're talking about. We made it to Sugarloaf Resort, where we booked a room for the night. It was cleaned up in our hotel room. We looked up to the peak of Sugarloaf, where we spent the night before. Just hiking Sugarloaf via the Appalachian Trail would have been difficult, never mind adding more peaks. There is an easier trail from the ski resort, which is also an option. Sugarloaf was my 8th peak I summited among the 14 Maine 4,000 footers, and Spaulding made my 9th. My goal is to hike the New England 67, which is a list of the 67 peaks above 4,000 feet in elevation in Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. Currently, I have just 5 peaks left. Almost there. I linked to some resources below. If you're an experienced hiker, this will be a great time, but there's better peaks if you're just starting out. Until next time.